Live.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's show. We've got a great show. We are going to be talking about how to avoid injury after your break, hiatus, or vacation. I know a lot of people around the world are coming back from the Easter holiday period, and we've got some pretty important stuff to share about how you should reintroduce exercise. We're very, very excited because it's Wednesday, which means it's Physio Wednesday. So allow me to introduce the crew. If this is the first time joining us, my name's Yanni Burmeister. To my left is Phil White from ADPT Physio. You can find him at ADPT Physio. What is it? Dot physio.
Yep, just
Yeah,
adpt.physio.
ADPT.physio. How
Keep
good.
just confusing everyone all the time.
And below us is Richie the Rig driving the show. How are you, Richie?
Great, as always, Yanni. Thank you.
And of course, together we are Unity Gym and the Unify Movement System, where we turn driven people just like yourself how to be strong, flexible, and fit. And with Phil's help and ADPT Physio, remain injury free and performing at your optimal best. We are really excited about today's show because this is something that in the past I've certainly mismanaged and got wrong and ended up injured. And I think it's something really, really important that we talk about. It's an important discussion. But before we do, please, 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 if you're watching on YouTube, I'm just going to do this myself right now. Smash that like button. It does help us, helps get this content out in front of others. And let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. And likewise, if you're tuning in live on the Movement Mastermind Facebook group, everybody out there, whether you're on the podcast, in the YouTube sphere, make sure you go over and join the UMS Movement Mastermind on Facey. You get access to our 20-minute flexibility routine. You can book a seat in the 5-day flexibility challenge, working directly with Rad, absolutely free. And you also get access. We give away our UMS warm-up routines. They're 10-minute routines for the upper and lower body. It's all available. You have to join the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Good morning to Vinny Brown over there. I've just had a look at some of your videos, Vinny. Good stuff, brother. You are absolutely crushing it. All right, let's kick things off. What happens, Phil, when we stop exercising if we're used to exercise? And I tell you what, I experienced this ridiculously, and I don't know if this has ever happened before. I went away for a week and I trained really hard up until the week that I went away, and then sort of tried to put myself into an overreaching state. So I was training the same muscles 4 times a week, and I did that for an extended cycle of 5 weeks, and I was pretty battered. So I went away, and I just knew that I was going to be sitting on my butt, drinking beer, eating hot cross buns, and enjoying the gains. But when I came back, I decided to go to the gym on the weekend. I returned on Friday late, so it was probably hard to train. So Saturday, I got up, dragged myself up to the gym just to get my routine kicked off again, and just did what I refer to as a muscle flushing workout where I just did every single muscle, every exercise that I like, front squat, back squat, overhead press, bench press, chin up, bent over row, uh, conventional deadlift, sumo deadlift. And I only did 2 sets of everything, 2 sets of 8 to 10 reps on everything, just to give everything a bit of a nudge. And I did it at about 60% max for that rep range. So there was still reps in the tank in every set. And everything felt difficult. Everything felt difficult. And then on Monday's workout and yesterday's workout, I'm doing a dense strength method where I'm doing 20 reps at a maximum weight singles on the minute as the primary 2 exercises with no alternating sets, which is so nice. It's really fun to do. But anyway, with a couple of auxiliary exercises, and the first 2 workouts have gone really well. But that workout on Saturday felt really difficult. And quite frankly, I don't think I would have been able to lift the weights I was lifting when I left. When I left, I was doing 8 reps at 140 kilos on the back squat. And when I got back, like 90 kilos felt difficult. What's happening there, Phil, when we take time off and do nothing?
Yeah, it's I think a frustration that anyone who's just trained seriously really knows about, where you can be feeling like you're kicking goals in your training and everything's going really well, and then time away, whether it's sort of illness or holidays, ideally, can just feel like you've gone backwards, and it is such a tricky one mentally to get your head around, because it can feel like you've totally undone all the hard work you've put in the past. But it's a very normal and expected part of training, because when you think about when we're producing strength, or we're like doing something, especially strength, really, is a lot of people think like it's all about structurally how much muscle you have, and that if you've lost strength, then you've lost muscles, then you've lost muscle, and that you will take ages to get that back. When really, if you've heard us talk about strength before, you know that there's a big neurological component to strength. So basically, how much your brain is able to activate the different motor units that are already that are always there. And when there's examples of mothers picking up cars off babies because they're basically able to access all this strength that is otherwise we don't have access to, and that's because of the central governor theory of basically you've got some self-protective mechanisms in place, so you don't just rip your tendons off your bones by producing too much force, but we've got some latent strength there for kind of your fight or flight situations where you can save yourself, but it'll probably cause yourself a bit of damage along the way if you always produce that force. So where that's relevant to coming back from training, and your example there, Yanni, of going from feeling really comfortable at 140 for reps and then 90 feeling heavy, is basically when you've been doing, as you said, like you've really habituated high intensity strength activation with your sort of peak week there, and then when you've gone away and you've had your week up the coast with family, eating cross buns and drinking beers, like that really turns down the dial on that kind of neural activation side of strength. So you've habituated eating cross buns rather than habituating strength efforts. So now when you come back to doing what you would have thought would be really easy, is your body's like, but I'm a hot cross bun eating machine. I'm not made for lifting weights. What is this? And it can just
I'll be completely honest. I didn't eat one hot cross bun, but I drank way more than one beer. And I'll add to that. That I actually picked up a little bit of a cold whilst I was away. Don't worry, I've tested myself several times for coronavirus, and all of them have come back clear. But including one yesterday. But I think, the virus that I've picked up as well would certainly be hampering my strength potential. But I've certainly got this wrong, and I know that Richard's probably experienced the same thing, because Richard's probably a little bit more disciplined than me in regards to load management, but we both sort of train in the same way. I think that what I've done in the past is I've often gone away, and it's only really been in the last couple of years that I've learned that load management is just so important to avoid injury. And now that I'm in my 40s, every injury is a lot harder to recover from. So you really want to try to manage yourself a little bit better. And so I feel like I'm getting better at this, but I have certainly come back from a hiatus from exercise before and tried to leap into it where I left off, and ended up in stitches, like really, really battered from that. And so, maybe we could share a little bit about what we recommend people do. And I actually had a very specific question about this in our Movement Mastermind Facebook group. No, mate, it was actually an email. I got an email yesterday in response to my email that I sent out, asking, like, how do we measure this? How can we make this tangible? What should we do? And I haven't responded, so I'm interested to get your take on this. If like I said in my email, from the 7-day point, usually 7 days your body will maintain, and I think if I hadn't have got sick, I probably would have been okay. But if from the 7-day point, I notice a real drop off, a real decline. So if I stretch it out and I stay away from exercise for 8, 9, 10, 11, up to 14 or 21 days, then when I come back, you've got to regress a lot, right? And what do you know any of the data, or what's your opinion? What's your take? And you too, Richard, on how you manage this, where you go. At what point do you regress? After how many days, and how much do you regress?
Yeah, I think like one place where this really comes up a lot in athletic sport. I mean, in marathon, like I just did my first marathon last weekend, and tapering is a really common part of endurance performance. And when it comes to like powerlifters that I worked with in the past, like they'll also have sort of a strength taper where you basically really deload what you're doing to basically try and be as fresh as possible when it comes to race day. And a typical taper, like you'd be looking at doing kind of a week of next to nothing. So in saying that, like a lot of tapering programs will have very short efforts at a decent intensity just to try and maintain a bit of what you've got. Because again, as we talked about a lot before with having minimal viable workouts, like there's a lot of power in even doing a little bit. It might seem like it's not worth doing, but even 1 or 2 sets on each of your kind of muscle groups at an adequate intensity can do wonders for maintaining what you've got. But yeah, typically I think like if you're stretching it past a week of doing absolutely nothing, then that's where you can really start to run into issues. And as my not so successful marathon went, I can attest to the fact that doing nothing for about 2 weeks pre-race was not ideal. So lesson learned.
And you did that specifically because of you had a bit of a knee issue, right?
I had some niggles that I really didn't want to be a problem when I started the race, and I had every intention to do some conditioning, some cross training stuff on the assault bike, and some skipping to condition my calves to being used to running, and some eccentric work on keeping my quads and legs strong. And I didn't put a plan in place, and I did nothing because life got in the way. So lesson learned. But yeah, but certainly when you're getting to that 2-week mark, like that can really mean that you basically your body will start to lose a lot of the adaptations it has to the load that you're used to. So yeah, in terms of like tangible numbers, like I'm not aware of specific prescriptions around how much you should deload, and it's definitely going to be impacted by someone's training age. So training age is something that we've talked about quite a lot, which is basically how long have you been doing this specific type of adaptation or this type of training, and how much time has your body had to get used to that style of training. Because as we've talked about, like different tissue types have different adaptation time horizons. So muscles being on the quicker end of things, it's sort of 6 weeks to really kick into hypertrophy, whereas tendons, ligaments, bones all stretch out into the sort of months. So if you're really new to exercise, you do 2 weeks of hard exercise and then you take 2 weeks off, like you basically, you haven't really given your body a chance to even adapt to what you spent your time doing. But if you're someone who's been training for years and then you take a good sort of 2 weeks off exercise, then coming back into it, you could probably get away with a bit more than someone who's not had that same kind of run up.
Less conditioned. The only downside to that, I think, is that when you've had a lot of training experience, like someone like myself, you're generally lifting really heavy loads to get the stimulus. And so I always find that, like, good Lord, I can't come back to that. And I have a strategy, which I'll share in a sec, but I'd love to get Richard's opinion on this, on how he manages it, because I think there's probably different ways that you can do it and do it effectively. Exactly what you said.
Don't ask Richie. Don't ask Richie. He's never missed a week of training in his life. Like
that's the other part of what I want to hear. Have you ever missed a week of training, Richard?
Yeah, of course I have. Of course I have. I've missed quite a few weeks of training. Like, I'm not that religious about exercise, guys. Don't take me as like the super strict dude.
Lies.
But yeah, but I am.
Lies,
like,
yeah.
I would say I tend to train quite often, and when I do take weeks off, it's, again, I allow myself that week off. Like if I go home and see my family for that week, like I don't commit myself to exercise because I know, my priorities have shifted towards my family, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't kill me mentally to do that. So that when I do come back, I'm also very mentally geared. Okay, this week that I'm coming back into is not going to be like what I did in previous weeks. This is a planned deload. This is a planned deload in intensity and in volume. So I look at it like that. So how many reps I'm doing in the workout, or how many sets. I might take 25% off, maybe 50, depending on how long I've had off. But generally, if it's like a week, then what I feel good for me personally is if I've got 4 sets of an exercise, I do 3, And if I've taken anything longer than a week off, if I'm normally doing, say, 6 exercises, I might only do 4, So not only do I do only 3 sets, but I only do 4 exercises instead of 6. So my total volume comes right down. That, and I realistically think, what an appropriate intensity is in terms of how heavy I'm lifting. Like if I'm squatting 100 kilos, I'll come into it and go, okay, I'm just going to do my first couple of sets at 80 kilos, maybe do one set at 90, or maybe touch 100 kilos, back to what I was previously doing, just so that, I'm giving my body to relearn that movement, but not push it super hard. Because like Phil said, a big part of those gains that you lose in that first week is just going to be like neural strength, this ability to coordinate your muscles to lift this heavy load, and your body's not going to be as good at doing that. So the chances of straining your muscle at that same intensity are probably higher because you're not as well versed in it as you were. So I just think of that. I just think, okay, I'm not going to lift as heavy. I'm going to back off maybe 20%, 10% in terms of intensity. And like I said, in terms of volume, I'm scaling back 25%, maybe a little bit more. Yeah. That's how I do it. And I find that does quite well. And then within a week, I'm sort of lifting to what I was previous. But again, it's like I'm also listening to my body. Like if I feel like I need a little bit more time at readjusting and building myself back up, then I take that time.
Yeah, love it. And in terms of like practical applications of how to do this, I think exactly what Richard said there is really spot on for that sort of week off amount of time. I did just want to jump on what Yanni said before handing over to Richard, which is basically like it's going to really be dependent as well on like kind of what level you're at, because I think there's a lot of people who are in the early stages of their training journey who, are sort of getting to that like maybe a body weight squat or deadlift. And that's like their kind of max and that's their peak intensity, when really like most of those people will have the strength potential to lift a whole lot more than that, but they maybe haven't just had that exposure to it. They maybe haven't had the technique kind of like the level of technique guidance necessary to really push into sort of what would be more than just your sort of latent strength potential. So for someone like Yanni, who is, when you're doing like 140, 150, like, in the past you've done up to 180 kilo squat, like that's not a normal level of strength for most people. Like that's just not something that, if you just, that's something where you have to purposefully accumulate more muscle size and a whole lot more strength than what would be naturally kind of your body would be capable of. Whereas, getting most people off the street, giving them some good guidance, they could probably get to a body weight squat pretty quickly. So I think it really depends on where you are in that scale of like, are you doing what's kind of normal for the human body, or are you doing something at that like, advanced and elite level? Because if you're doing things that's kind of like beyond what the normal human body can kind of do, that's going to really have a different impact on how quickly you get back to doing that with your time off. Because if Yanni had time off and previously his peak had been, a body weight squat, like you'd be able to do that in a next week, no worries. Like,
yeah,
so
that's right.
It really like when you see people who are lifting like top level powerlifter sort of level numbers, like that's not a normal human thing. Like you have to do such specific OLED principles and dietary interventions and things to facilitate that. And so, that your body has like this idea of homeostasis of going back to like its sort of set point. It's like it's healthy, normal. Like your body will be like, whoa, what the hell are we doing with all this like extra muscle? We don't need this shit. Like, get rid of it. It's taking up too much energy. So, like for people who are at that really advanced side of things, you do have those kind of challenges.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Richard said there is really important, and you do get the I guess benefit of with experience of being able to listen to your body and being able to sort of determine what you're capable of a little bit more precisely than someone who's got less experience. But I think from a very practical, if we bring this in for a landing, and there's a good question that's come through from Vinny Brown in the Movement Mastermind group, which we might be able to answer too. But the from a practical standpoint, what we want everyone to understand is that if you have more than a week off training, irrespective of your fitness level, conditioning level, you should absolutely alter the reintroduction of exercise. Don't try to do what you did before you went on vacation. If it's under a week or maybe up to a week, you might get away with it. But I would always err on the caution side if you've had an absence from exercise and like literally done zero training. And I would always say, from a starting point for me, I have a strategy where my first workout is always a total body workout a few days before I start my plan again, and that's really just to reintroduce getting to the gym, the habit, the workout. And it was the same with my running. You know, I'm going for my first run today. I went for a shortened run, the half the distance the other day on Saturday or Monday, and it was the run that I do was just so packed. I didn't really time it well, and so it was a bit difficult to run anyway. But so I deloaded both my running and like my cardio and my weights training, and did a very, what I would consider a very easy, light workout. And there's a psychological reason for that too, you know, because when you interfere with your habit and your routine or your rituals, it's sometimes a bit confronting and hard to get started again. And so what I find is if I minimize or massively reduce the volume and intensity, it's easier to get to the gym and or get out and put my sneakers on and go for that cardio session. Whereas if you try and leap to the summit of your goals again straight away, it's just off-putting and you just don't get it done, and people procrastinate and don't get started again. So I find that from a psychological standpoint, that works really well for me as well. But then the third thing I would say is like really lower your expectations and shelve your ego for that first week, like what Richard was talking about. Go in with the intention that this is a planned deload week, your first week back, introduction, and just see how your body's feeling, you know? See how your body's feeling. If you've been on the couch binging Netflix for a week, you're going to find that there's things that are tight and things that are like really disengaged. And then you're also dealing with the neurological down uh, turn down that Phil talked about there, where you've become more conditioned to what you've been eating and drinking as opposed to how your body's been moving. So you're dealing with a lot of factors there. So I think there's three, you know, good things to think about. You know, you are going to have to deload if you've spent some time away. So just get over it. Shelve your ego and focus on a planned reintroduction deload week, and potentially get to the gym the first time, literally halving your expectations, and do just a little bit of a whole body workout. If you're a runner, go for a walk instead. If you've been running before, go for a walk instead. You know, just to get out, get your routine going again. If you have your intensity strategy for that first session, you'll find it easier to get done, and that will create that little bit of momentum that you need to get started again. It will recharge your endorphins. Like a good brisk walk at a decent rate where you get your heart rate up to, you know, that fat burning zone, that is enough to recharge your endorphins. And so is a very light to moderate intensity strength training session, you know. So you'll feel good afterwards, and that'll give you that little bit of momentum to get the next workout done. And before you know it, like Richard said, it might take a week or two. You'll be back doing what you were doing before, and you'll be feeling great again, you know. Vinny here has asked a question that we'll get real quick to. When training for a competition, does it make sense to treat the week of competition as a deload week, backing off volume to about 40%? I've got a Taekwondo tournament coming up in September, and I want to plan my training for summer up to then. Vinny, in my experience, the competition week, you shouldn't train at all. If you've got a big competition up there like that, you should be tapering for at least 2 to 3 weeks prior to the comp, which means that you slowly reduce the amount of volume that you're doing up until the comp. And, you know, probably you're doing very, very light stuff for the day or two before the
I,
comp, if
I've
anything at all?
actually just to like, because I've been looking into a lot about tapering with my running, and also like come across some stuff from combat and strength sports. Like, I think keeping adequate intensity is key, but really bringing down the volume of workload
Volume, yeah,
is important, because volume is what fatigues you, but you
Yep.
need that adequate intensity to like keep you primed in terms of like neural activation and all that side of things. So for
Yep.
Taekwondo, you want to stay explosive, you want to stay like fast. So
Yep.
I'd be keeping in things like, a couple of like, even some skipping, some like jumping, some like things like that, some weights where you're pushing it at a decent clip, like decent intensity, at decent speed, but just bring the volume right back. And then certainly like the days leading up to it, then you really want to be fresh and ready to go. But I think like the old approach used to be like totally deloaded intensity as well, but then people found that by the time they got to actually competing, you're slow, you're
Yeah, you've
sluggish, and
slowed
you're
right down.
not able
Yeah,
to produce
yeah,
force. So
yeah,
yeah, but yeah,
absolutely.
definitely good approach.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Sorry we didn't get more time on that, Vinny. Great question though. Maybe we can do a whole show on that another time. We got to jump into our
Yeah.
coaching group now. We're a couple of minutes late, guys, for our UMS coaching and the programs group we go live to today. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much, Phil, for that. That was really, really good, really insightful. And thank you very much, Richie.
You guys.